Good evening, everybody. It's great to be here. I'll have to get a copy of that so I can play that for my mother-in-law so she knows I'm not such a bad guy. Well, it's great to be here tonight. As you heard, my kids go to Krieger Schechter, and the Jewish education, it's really rubbed off on them. I was driving around with my son. He was 6 at the time, and we're driving by a pond, and he looks at the pond. He sees people fishing. He said, "Hey, Dad, look at all those people fishing. Are they fishing for gefilte fish?" And I thought, that's what you pay for a Jewish education for. Well, tonight I thought I'd talk a little bit about some points in my career, some of the fascinating people that I've had an opportunity to interact with, to learn from, some stories. 20 years I've come across some amazing people, and I thought I'd share some of that with you tonight. I've had the unique opportunity in my career to interview some of the most important athletes, not only of our generation, but of all time. Had a chance to interview Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player ever. Hank Aaron, the all-time home run king. Had a chance to sit down with John Unitas, the greatest quarterback ever. So all these incredible Hall of Famers. And of course, the best player that is not in the Hall of Fame. And just for wearing that jacket, Pete Rose should not be in the Hall of Fame. But so many more. I've sat down with the real heavyweight champion of the world and the not-so-real heavyweight champion of the world, the wrestling champion of the world. I've interviewed some of the heaviest people you'll ever come across. Of course, that's Tony Siragusa, Goose, and just be thankful that I didn't get one of the pictures of him with his shirt off. Now, so many people say, gosh, I'd love to be in the locker room. If you go in the locker room and you see Tony Siragusa after a game with his shirt off sitting on one of these stools, close your eyes and picture a vanilla mudslide, because that's Tony Siragusa. So many others had a chance to MC beauty pageants and attend and cover Super Bowls and even play in a professional football game. And yes, I survived and lived to tell about it afterwards. Was even in on a tackle, and you'll see that. I've sat there and interviewed Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders with this big Texas hair and baseball players with big heads that inexplicably got bigger and bigger. Who knew? I have unfortunately and inadvertently introduced my children to steroid users and cheaters and even convicted felons, and we'll talk about that. And along the way, I've talked sports with people that aren't in sports, governors and speakers of the House, and yes, even the leader of the free world. So it's been a great run over the last 20 years having the chance to interact with all these people. Now, a lot of people will say to me, how'd you get in the business? Where did you start? My background, as you heard, I graduated with a finance degree from Boston College. Well, how does a guy with a finance degree end up in sports? It's an interesting story. I interned, and this is why I always tell young people, I say, go out besides your education. Go out and get practical experience in the real world. I got an internship my senior year at a TV station, and one of the sportscasters said, you should do this for a living. You get to go to the games for free and wear jeans. And I said, hey, that's it. I'll go do that. It's not as easy as that. And then a professor made the mistake of telling me, he said, you know what? Your background is in business. You'll never make it. Don't even try. The wrong thing to say to a young and hungry 22-year-old. And I said, I'll prove this guy wrong. So I started to try to get into the business. The first thing I had to do is the ultimate indignity, parents, of moving back home. So I go back home. Not only do I go back home, but I have to go back and volunteer at my old high school at a community access station. My aha moment came in April of 1989. I'm walking down the hall, right? And I come across my 15-year-old brother who hated me to begin with, especially hated me because I was in his school on his turf. And he stopped as I was walking by. Here I am, trying to make my way in this business, stooping to new lows, going back to my old high school. He stops, he's got his buddies, looks at me, glares at me, and says, do you know that nobody likes you, nobody watches your show, nobody wants you here, and everybody thinks you're a loser? And that was my aha moment. Actually, it was more like a, I got to get the hell out of here moment. So I decided, and I already paid a price to try to get into the business. And so I'd gone through voice lessons to get rid of my Boston accent because somebody said, you'll never get a job in this business outside of this region. So I decided, that's it. I'm going to go get my job. And so I went home. And I knew that it was going to be very difficult to get a job in the business because everybody knew about the jobs. I knew I had to find the job that nobody else knew about. So I pulled out this book. It's called the Broadcast Handbook. And it had a list. This, of course, is before the internet. It had a list of every TV station in the entire country. Hundreds and hundreds of TV stations. So I started on a Monday in the A's, and I started calling stations up. Hi, this is Steve Davis calling from Boston. Incredible enthusiasm. Wonder if you have any openings in your sports department. No, sorry, we don't. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Made over 1,000 phone calls around the country. It's 5 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon. That's it, I'm done, completely discouraged. Walk out of the office. Stop. Say to myself, the call you don't make is the job you're not going to get. So I get back in there in the W's. I call up WOAY in West Virginia, Oak Hill, West Virginia, little small town. Hi, this is Steve Davis. Not so enthusiastic anymore. Calling from Boston. You know, you probably don't have any jobs in your sports department, but just wondering if maybe you do. And the guy says, actually, both my guys gave notice on Monday. This is Wednesday. So I type up a letter, hustle down to FedEx, send the tape. They get it on Thursday. He calls me on Friday. I fly down Monday at my own expense and have a job by Tuesday. People said to me afterwards, wow, you got really lucky. I said, lucky? I said, no. Lucky would have been if I didn't live at home for a year and I started in the A's and got a job in the A's. I truly believe, a lesson for people out there, kids out there, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. I'd set myself up for that by the hard work that I had done. So I get my first job. I got to West Virginia. You all seen the movie Deliverance? It's basically where I was. My father drops me off. Very proud moment for him. I'm getting my first opportunity in television. Drive around West Virginia a little bit, this small town. Looks at me, says, son, I love you. I'm proud of you. And if you want to live until July, don't tell anyone here you're Jewish. So I was on my way, starting my career. And the career path of a sports broadcaster, any broadcaster, is very much like the path of, I guess you could say, professional baseball player. Start in the low minors. My first job in West Virginia, a single-A town. My next job was San Antonio, Texas. They had a double-A baseball team. Next job after that was Portland, Oregon, triple-A team. Next job after that, Baltimore, which had a major league team. They're now back in triple-A, but that's another story. I thought I'd made it to the majors. So I get to Portland. I'm in San Antonio. I'm trying to get out, move up in my career. And remember I told you that luck is when preparation meets opportunity? Sometimes you just get lucky. I'm in San Antonio and I get a call. Well, the guy who was the sportscaster in Portland had made a terrible mistake. He had a very good relationship with somebody named Budweiser. And so one night in between shows, actually many nights in between shows, he'd go to the sports bar across the street from the station and enjoy himself a little bit. So one night he goes on the air and he's talking about the start of football practice. And he says, oh, those pads were popping. No, those pods were papping. And let out with a little bit of a burp. That was it. News director said, that's it. We're not going to have a guy on who doesn't know the difference between pads popping and pods papping. And so that was my lucky break. Thought it was my lucky break. How many lawyers do we have here? There must be lawyers here in the crowd. Of course there's lawyers in the crowd. I had my lawyer moment as my father would preach to me as I was working my way through the business, talking to news directors and general managers and agents. He said, son, I'm going to give you some advice. They're going to tell you their word is their bond. If their word is their bond, they won't mind putting it in writing. I learned the hard way because their word was their bond. They didn't put it in writing. I went to Portland. Didn't work out. Next stop, Baltimore.